How's it going, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Animal Talk Podcast. With me, your host, Ryne Ferguson. We're going to be chatting to someone who's really close to me and a very good friend of mine. We worked together at Monte Cassino Bird Gardens for many years, and someone I still talk to pretty much on a daily basis. Joanne Meyer, welcome to the show, Jo. So nice to have you here.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Jo. How's it going?
Awesome, thanks. Just, awesome to be on your show and just honored to be your first guest.
Thanks. Yeah, awesome. So nice to hear from you. And of course, we're doing our social distancing part because we're doing this over Skype. Joanne is in Johannesburg, and I am sitting in KwaZulu-Natal. So we're making sure we're keeping to our social distancing. So, Jo, first question, and the question that probably gets asked all the time and makes us all really have to think hard, is what is your favorite animal?
My favorite animal? Well, as a kid growing up, I'd say the chameleon is my favorite animal. I love chameleons.
And why is that your favorite animal?
As a kid growing up in Cape Town, I actually had chameleons in my garden. They used to breed in my garden. I used to watch them. Their garden was just an awesome thing to have chameleons in your own garden.
That is so cool. I don't think I've ever had a chameleon in my garden. So that is really interesting. How did that whole love for animals start in your life?
So as a young girl growing up, I used to go to the Kruger National Park a lot with my dad. Every single year, we took a trip to the Kruger National Park, and basically, he loved the bush, he loved animals, and it all came through from him really. And we'd go visit the Kruger Park every year, and that's where it all started.
That's fantastic. So it's pretty much going and seeing wildlife in their natural environment and you wanting to get involved in that sort of thing. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, being in Cape Town, living in Cape Town, I've actually had a love for marine life, firstly, and wanted to go into marine biology, actually.
Very interesting. I think that's a lot of what a lot of us think about when we're first thinking about the career path. I think a lot of people want to go into that sort of thing. So what was your first animal job that you actually did?
Well, funny enough, as a young girl, I didn't do much at school like many people do. Like I know you did a lot, a lot volunteering as a young boy while you were at school. I
That
didn't
was
have
to
that
get me out of
opportunity.
school.
Get you out of school, yeah,
Yeah.
we know that. But I never had that kind of opportunity, or maybe I should have gone and looked for that opportunity. Now that I think back, I actually wish I had done more as a young girl like that. I think it would have helped a lot. Um, I didn't do anything like that. So when I left Cape Town and came up to Joburg to finish matric in Joburg, literally. And then, I didn't actually volunteer or anything like that. And only eventually after studying, um, I did a year of secretarial at school, computing and secretarial work. I studied a diploma in that, which, that's not exactly the line that I wanted to go into, but yeah, my mom did that and my gran did that, and my mom just thought that's the way life goes. Like I have to do that, and I
Right.
wasn't entirely sure about that.
Mhm.
And then I actually eventually put myself through a field guiding course.
Okay.
Way after the secretarial thing, I still worked in the industry for about 5 years,
hmm
and then eventually did this field guiding course. And then I went up to Tanzania, of all places, and I stayed there for about half a year and worked up at a game lodge there. That's basically the first place that I would have worked in the industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So pretty much going into wildlife and guiding was your first kind of pickup job working with animals. Did you
Yeah.
ever have any sort of contact with any wildlife while you were doing your secretary work, like direct contact in any way, not just going to the Kruger Park, but any um, sort of picking up injured birds, for example?
Um, Not really. That's a strange thing. Obviously, I'd always be there if there was such a situation.
Right.
But I never volunteered in any places as such. I wish I had, though. Looking back,
Hmm.
it would have helped, I think. And yeah, I'm just trying to think back to those times. Not really. Eh?
And then your next job, moving from working as a field guide. How many years were you working as a field guide, Joe?
No, so I didn't work as a field guide for long at all. I was, like I said, in Tanzania just for about 6 months at a lodge
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I came back from there, and I thought to myself, I'm coming back to the big bad Joburg, and what am I going to do here? Because now
The
I've
big
been living,
smoke.
yeah, I've been living in the bush for all this time, like literally lions walking past your window at night, like in the middle
Wow.
of
Yeah.
absolute nowhere.
Hmm.
And now I'm coming back to Joburg, and now what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I didn't want to go back into the secretarial world because that was not what I was doing. I really didn't enjoy that at all because I literally hopped from job to job for about 5 years, just not being happy with what I was doing.
Yeah.
And eventually, one day, I came across an advert in a newspaper, a job advert saying
Hmm.
it was an advert for something to do with bird. It had the word birds, and it wasn't very descriptive, but it just said um, in kiddies education. It was around that, but not much other than that.
Right.
So I sent in my CV. Didn't know where it was. It didn't give away as to where it was at all.
Mhm.
Sent in my CV, and it turned out that it was the Monte Cassino Bird Gardens.
Okay.
And that was for the education and marketing position at Monte Cassino Bird Gardens.
Right.
And that was where I landed. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you started at Monty, and then from there, how did you? I'm guessing, being the education officer, you would have ended up working quite closely with the keeper staff. Moving around with your holiday program and all of that type of stuff. So, how did you get yourself sort of more into the animal side while there?
So it was a great position to start off with. I was obviously doing the kiddies education, the kiddies tours, taking the kids on their tours around the gardens, and doing holiday
Hmm.
program in holidays. The kiddies would come and spend a day there, and I just felt that it wasn't all that I wanted. I wanted to work with the animals. I wanted to be hands on with the animals, and
Right.
I was only in that position for about 6 months when a position at the show, the bird show, came available, and I immediately took up that position. I said, I'm going down to show, and
Hmm.
I, I went and had an interview um, with the manager at the time,
Hmm.
and I was quite shy back then, actually. I was not one for standing up and talking in front of lots of people. So I thought to myself for a while, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But the thought of like working with the animals so closely like they did and training those birds like they did, I didn't care. I just thought I can do this. I can do this. I'm going to
Hmm.
just put everything aside and I can do this. And they made me speak in the interview. They made me do like a test on stage, a voice test, and that was daunting. And pushed through it, and yeah, ended up getting the position at show. Yeah.
I have to ask Joe, on that note, we both went through the same thing when we started at the bird show. You obviously a year or so, or 2 or 3 before me, but I remember very well having to do Baba Black Sheep over the microphone.
Yes, I remember you said that.
Yeah, so I don't know. Did you have to do that? What was your thing that you had to say over the microphone?
I'm trying to think, Ryan. It's a long time ago. And yes, it was Karen, wasn't it?
It
Karen
probably was.
interviewed, right?
Yep.
Yes, it was Karen at the time. Trying to think. I think she was just nasty to you back then. I think she was nice to me. I don't remember singing a nursery rhyme.
Oh, you're lucky.
I
Yeah,
know, I
I had to think of how to sing the nursery rhyme. I've forgotten the nursery rhyme by then. But
know.
I do remember that. Um, but yeah, do you remember, Joe, the first time we actually met when I started working at the bird park?
Yes, I do. Down at show, I was there for what?
Just to clarify with all the listeners, when we say down at show, it
It
was
sounds
literally down at show, because the show area was much lower and almost under the ground level of the main building or office building. So that's why if ever you hear us talk about the show area, we always talk about down at show because it was literally under and down the bottom.
it was, yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it was that show. We met there, and I think we sort of made that connection through the love for animals and wildlife in general and conservation. And I think it was from there that things just sort of went crazy, and then we became real good friends. And we have spent pretty much most of the time. I think most of our time, whenever we chat, is just pretty much talking about animals and the industry we work in.
Yeah, it's sure it is, yeah.
So I, if I remember correctly, Joe, and I'm trying to think back, but we used to have quite a few flyaways with the bird show, as any bird show does have at certain times of the year. But there's one specific flyaway that I want to talk about, and that is our Cape Vulture Moholo flying off onto the main road. And you have a very interesting story about how you managed to get that bird back to the show area. And I think you need to
Oh,
tell
good.
everybody about that.
Yes, wow. Gee, thinking about that. Wow. So yes, Mo flew away as she did. They need to stretch their wings at times. She flew over Witkoppen, if you know the Fourways area where Monte Casino is. She flew over Witkoppen. I think she did a few circles. Um, yeah, well, I basically was on foot, and then there was a couple of us that obviously have to get the vehicle and get onto the road in case. Um, I just put foot and I pretty much ran up to William Nicol Road, and I was running up to the main intersection there at Monte Casino, and I just saw a car parked at the robot, but with tons of people just gathered around the boot of this vehicle, and I just immediately ran up to the vehicle, and there Moholo was inside the boot. There was a lady, it was her car, and she was still in the car, if I remember. And then there was just tons of people in the back of the around the boot, and I ran up to the vehicle, and there was this poor bird in the back of this lady's boot, and I just like freaked out. I ran, literally ran with my arms like screaming and just pushing people out the way. I'm like, that's my bird, move out the way. And my arms are just going, and I was just pushing people aside. And I literally pushed through these people to Mo, and I just grabbed her. I just grabbed her out the boot. I grabbed her obviously by the neck first, as you do with the vulture. And as I picked her up, I realized her feet were tied together. And
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
that was a bit hectic. Like it kind of was quite sad. But in that short space of time, the people had managed to catch her and actually tie her feet together.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I literally grabbed her out the boot, feet still tied, and then was about to then proceed across the main road to back to Monty. And that lady whose vehicle it was, she said to me, "Get in, just get in the back. I'll drive you up as close as we can." And I jumped in the back of her car with Mo on my lap, and
Oh my
she
goodness.
drove me as close as possible back down to the show. Yeah,
Wow. What an experience. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that story so well. I'm not sure if I was there that day. It might have been one of my days off, but There were many Maholo flyaways that I think we were all involved in, and I remember one of the ones that I was involved in. Same road. She always used to fly the same pathway over the main road. I remember her being in the middle island. It's a two-way road with two lanes on each side, and there's an island in the middle. And I sort of started trying to go towards her, and there's traffic up and down. And as I went towards her, she took off, and I thought, "There's no way, you're not going away now." And I remember launching myself in the air and grabbing her and pulling her down to the ground, because her safety was our biggest concern. If it was an open area, I think we would have been okay with trying to sort of call her down and get her coming back and
Yeah.
sort of. But I think having that main road there was quite challenging when it came to her and her flying off. She's a very large bird, so I'm sure a lot of people would have seen her.
Mm.
But can you imagine, Joe? You're driving, let's say you're driving to work or driving to the shops, and you're driving along in the middle of Joburg, and you see this giant white vulture flying towards your vehicle.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how I'd react. I
No.
suppose being a bird person, I'd probably be like, "Wow, that's amazing," and try and message everybody and tell them what I saw. But as a person that doesn't know maybe a lot about animals, I have no idea what those people might have thought.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Oh.
Yeah, so some interesting stories there. And Joe, you spent quite a bit of time at the show, and then you kind of moved up a bit.
Yeah, so um in yeah, it was 2010 when I moved across from the show to the breeding center, which was built. I think must have started building the beginning of 2009 or so. It was a whole brand new section that they built alongside the bird gardens at Monte Casino.
Hmm.
Um, it was mostly parrots, a collection of parrots from all over the world, breeding pairs of parrots that all came up from Durban actually, um, and they needed staff to run the breeding center, and they asked me if I wanted to come across and help to run that
Hmm.
section. Yeah. Firstly, I said no because I wasn't leaving the show. I wasn't leaving my birds at the show.
Right.
I was having the best time ever.
Hmm.
You know, training birds, presenting shows. What more can you ask for?
Yeah, you get
Um,
that huge connection and you form those massive connections with those birds.
yeah, for sure. I really had, and I said no. I didn't want to leave. It was really, really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, a month, 2 months went by, and they'd ask me every few weeks, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Please, please." And yeah, eventually I gave in, and
You were in demand.
I know. What can I say? Um, yeah, so down at the show area, there was a little brooder room, the only brooder room in the bird gardens where any incubation of any eggs and hatching and rearing of any birds would take place, and it was right there at the show. So often I would get asked to please help out, or can you feed these little duckies over the weekend because we're not going to be here.
Right.
So I guess it like all started like that, like just
Hmm.
helping out um, on the weekends, and if no one else was there, then I'd help out. Yeah, and that's where I think it all came from. While they were like maybe pushing and asking me to come across.
And how was the change, Joe, from moving from training birds to rearing birds?
Yeah, it's um, quite two different aspects, of course.
Sure.
Um, from something so tiny. Um, but yeah, it was really it was a good change for me, I think, and it's just what word am I trying to think of? Like to rear a little tiny baby that grows up pretty fast. Birds grow fast compared to a lot of other animals, and
Yeah.
yeah, just amazing to see them grow, and that yeah, you're the one that's put everything into that bird, and they've grown up. And often I did start training the little parakeets,
Hmm.
using some of the things that I had taken from show.
Sure.
to,
Yep.
into those other parrots as well.
And do you think that helped those young parrots in their future, wherever they were heading to, either into breeding or into another facility? You think that those small training things that you did with them probably helped them?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the birds, we weren't into obviously selling birds as pets. That wasn't
Hmm.
what we did.
Right.
There was one or two that would be going into that. And then I definitely put like more effort into them just to train just small little behaviors just to make it easier to
Hmm.
handle the bird at the end of the day.
Right.
So I think that really did help. As for breeding, it's quite a different story because you kind of got to let them do their own thing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it does help at the end of the day.
Talking about breeding, I think if anybody knows you that's listening to this podcast, they would probably know very well that if they think of Joanne Meyer, they think of a very large black bird with a red pouch and a long black beak.
Yeah, that's true.
I know that's exactly what I think of, and if I look at any of your social media, it's pretty much there most of the time. Joe's Southern Ground Hornbill freak, if you can put it like that.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think Joe's got a real soft spot for those little birds. Well, not so little, but yeah. And it brings me to my next question about rearing Southern Ground Hornbill chicks. You always used to tell me they get to a stage where they look like a what?
A black bag? No.
Before the feathers, before the feathers,
For the feathers.
right? They hatch as a pink coloration, and then they start going to that nice dark skin coloration, and then they start taking on quite a bit of food, which kind of gives them a bit of weight.
Uh-huh, yes.
Yeah, I'll help you with this one. You used to call them,
I was gonna say toad.
yep, a toad or a bullfrog. It's what you used to say.
All right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And if ever I scroll through your photographs or memories on social media, I always remember whenever I see those little black blobs, you always used to call them toads and bullfrogs. I remember that quite well. Um,
Yeah.
we also, you had moved over and I had stayed at the show, and we also had a connection with some of the show birds that were actually leaving the bird show and moving on to another place. And I remember us heading off on a road trip up north to go and take the birds to their new destination. And I think that was probably quite a memorable road trip. The two of us heading out, trying to find this place in the middle of the bush, and coming across tortoises walking across roads and getting out and taking photographs and
Talking to the
doing
tortoise.
talking to the tortoise. Yes, that happened. Yeah, so those are some of the memorable moments I remember.
Yeah,
Another one is your wedding. If I remember correctly, you even got birds involved in your wedding.
I did, yes.
You better tell the listeners a little bit more about that.
So, well, we had a spotted eagle owl fly the rings down the owl for us. Yeah,
And that was really cool. Getting to see that and having that whole interaction in your wedding was really cool and quite fitting. So,
yeah.
Joe, you've now subsequently left your position at Monty for a much bigger position, if I can put it like that,
Yeah.
as a mom,
Yes, indeed, I have.
and not just a mom of one now; it's a mom of two.
It's now 2 years. Sure.
Any words of wisdom as being a rearing of birds to moving on to having children?
Sure. No, the worlds apart. You can't even
Okay.
compare it. Yeah, no.
Not as easy as the birds, I'm guessing.
No, not as easy as the birds. The birds are very well behaved, and you can pop them back in the brooder, and they'll just happily be there and do their thing and wait for you to bring the food. They don't have too much to say.
Oh dear, I have this vision
Yeah.
of you popping your child into a brooder and leaving
Okay, I know. I often said I would do that. Okay, and we've
it.
had thoughts about that.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so, I have heard a lot about your traveling. You've done quite extensive traveling, mostly around Africa, Joe.
Yes, around Africa, I actually haven't left too much. I haven't left Africa as such. Um, yeah, not for a while though, unfortunately. But I've been into Zimbabwe, Zambia, um, and Botswana. Spent some time there, and I've been to Mozambique. But yeah, not for work as such.
So
Just visiting.
this is all traveling, but we all know as animal people or people working in the zoological industry or aquarium, we uh, we always go on holiday, but we always end up visiting other facilities.
Oh yeah, always you have to.
I think it's just part of who we are. Um, my extensive traveling through the rest of the world has involved me pretty much spending a lot of my time at other facilities and less of my time doing more exploring of any other things in those countries. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time doing that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that do that as well, and you're pretty much the same.
Yeah, totally. Like you look forward to it. Like before you even go, you jump online, like where you find all the spots and you know exactly okay that one's there and that one's there, and you're like totally like to go and
Yep.
visit these places and just to see what do they offer and what can how it can help you and your facility where you're working, and to
Right.
make those connections maybe with other
Absolutely.
keepers and other trainers. Yeah.
Yeah, and those connections are so important. And I think your trip kind of evolves around that and where those facilities are. And I don't know, I haven't had the opportunity to travel like that with a partner, but I'm sure you have. And is it challenging when it's somebody else, or is it pretty much the same?
You mean like you're traveling with someone that might not have the same mindset?
Correct.
It is, yeah, because sometimes, people are not everyone in your group. Maybe you're traveling in a group with a couple of people. They're not maybe
Mhm.
all interested in the same things as you are. And some people might think, well, you do this all day, every day. Why do you want to go see the same kind of thing again? But I guess we're just that kind of weird people. People don't get us sometimes.
I agree with that one.
Yeah.
So, Joe,
Yeah.
now that you're not in the industry, you sort of are still hanging in there volunteering, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, through the ground hornbill project, obviously we touched on that earlier, with me hand rearing the ground hornbills. Monty always worked very closely with the Mabula ground hornbill project. So when I said parrots, that there was a parrot breeding facility with all those parrots came two breeding pairs of southern ground hornbill also under my care in that breeding center. And that basically where my love for ground hornbills began. Obviously, well, I lie because I'd seen them in Kruger all those years growing up, and I was always in awe of these birds. And then
Right.
I got two pairs of birds to work with. And yeah, they were breeding pairs. They laid eggs every year.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I said, that's where the whole love started for them. And working with the Mabula Ground Hornbill Project, the eggs that hatched and were raised at Monty would then go to the project. Hand them over. They'd become like they then belong to the Ground Hornbill Project, with the hopes to release them back into the wild. So those birds would go into bush school, as we called it, which is mostly at Lawscorp Dam Nature Reserve. So they'd go within huge aviaries enclosures with other ground hornbills,
Hmm.
to learn to be ground hornbills. So when we raised them, we tried to do it as much as not to get them used to humans, um,
Hmm.
which is not always that easy when you're working in the city. But once they get into the bush, they go to those bush schools, and it helps a lot when once they integrated into a group and they can learn from the other ground hornbills to be real ground hornbills. Yeah, and that was the whole aim of that, is to get those birds out into the wild. And yeah, I'm still involved in that project. at the moment. Yeah, it just became my absolute passion to work alongside that project and to help wherever I can. Where at Monty, before I left, I was the stud book keeper for the ground
Hmm.
hornbills. And then when I left, there was someone else that took over from me at the time. But just recently, I've taken the stud book on again.
And so you've got your own babies and more babies to look after because you're kind of
Yeah.
looking after an entire breeding population
Yes, on paper. So at
on
least
paper.
it's not for reals, like the real animals that are looking for food and opening their mouths and begging for food like my kids do. No, at least
Right.
it's like it's all on paper. So that book is basically yeah, just a record of all the breeding birds and all birds in captivity in South Africa, at all the different institutions around South Africa. Just a record keeping system to see so we know who's who and who's breeding,
Yeah.
and moving birds around if need be, just also to keep the genetics good. Yeah, I really enjoy doing that, and it's great to now be back doing that again. It's just to be back in it, feel to be part of it again.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's great, Joe. I'm really excited for that, and I know how passionate you can be about wildlife, and especially about the southern ground hornbill. So definitely an asset to the Mabula Ground Hornbill project and the stud bookkeeping. So yeah, that's really fantastic. Joe, in sort of closing and trying to finish off, I see we're quite far into time, but another interesting question, because being around a lot of animal people and hearing, how people move around and do things, a lot of the things that I pick up is stuff that people wear, and that sounds weird, but we all have our favorite or our animal clothing that we have. And I know if ever you bump into an animal person, whether they're at work or not at work, there's a very good possibility they're going to be wearing an animal on their shirt, their pants, or a cap. And the question for you is, Joe, your favorite t-shirt in your cupboard with an animal on, what does it look like?
Sure, there are quite a few, over
You
the
see, I was
years.
right.
Uh-huh. Yeah, over the years you collect these things, right? Because you are obsessed with t-shirts like that, right?
Right.
Um, so you go to bird fairs and other places, and you have to have a t-shirt. You have to get a t-shirt.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I have a number of these t-shirts, and the Ground Hornbill Project, of course, sells t-shirts, and I have
Uh-huh.
quite a nice collection of those. So I'd say though that would be my
Your
favorite
best
one,
ones.
the Ground
Right.
Hornbill one. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm also a t-shirt kind of person, but I have this thing for caps,
Yeah.
and as you would know,
Yeah.
and I think I have a cap from pretty much every single place that I have visited animal-wise. And I'm sitting here looking up at a wall that has pretty much almost all of the caps that I own. And just briefly, I have a cap from Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. I have a cap from Australia Zoo. I have a cap from St. Louis Zoo in Missouri in the United States. I have my International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators hat. I have a Busch Gardens hat. I have a London Zoo
Wow.
hat, a Central Park in New York cap. I have Disney's Animal Kingdom cap. I have a Croc World cap. I have a Ushaka Marine World, and I have a Minnesota Zoo cap, all hanging up on the wall. So that kind
Wow.
of gives you a bit of an idea of my slight um,
Fetish.
fetish for
Yeah.
cats.
You need a Mabula Ground Hornbill
I
Project hat.
do. Do you guys have my Bullet Ground Humble Project caps?
We do.
I think I
Yes.
need one. Send one my way. I'm
I
getting my
shall.
Bullet Ground Humble caps. Got to add to the collection. It's got to happen.
Yay. Yes, I will organize that for you.
And Joe, one last thing. Black Eagle Project. You were
Yes.
you were part of the Black Eagle Project. Are you still part of it? Are you still helping out? I know you can't really get out there and do a lot of the monitoring now, but tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a project that runs from the Walter Sisulu National Botanical Gardens here in Roodepoort area in Johannesburg. There's a pair of eagles that breed there. They've been breeding there for, they say, probably into the early 1900s. many, many years. Not same birds, of course. They've
Hmm.
come and gone. The different birds. The one bird that recently actually just went off, disappeared, and was replaced, was around for about 40 years.
Wow.
Male it was, I think. Um, yeah, so a few years ago, I just became involved in that project, basically just monitoring the birds. Black eagles in South Africa are not endangered at all. There's quite a good number of them and breeding pairs. But this pair is very unique in that they are situated like in the middle of the city, just about. So they've got to just be looked after, basically, especially for the areas around where they would get their prey.
Mm.
That's the most important thing, is to look after those kind of areas so that they have
Right.
always have prey. Yeah, so basically every weekend they are monitored. There's a group of us that share the monitoring, and just awareness and education, and just teaching people that come through the gardens, and just speaking to people, teaching them about the eagles. Yeah, like you said, I haven't been able to do much monitoring in the past 2 years, 3 years actually, or so, but I'm hoping to get back into that as soon as I can.
That's great. And those just regular public people that walk into the botanical gardens there see you standing there with your scope and your bright orange T-shirt.
Yeah.
Are they quite excited about what you can show them?
They are. I mean, many people don't know that they're eagles there at all. A lot of
Mhm.
people know about it, but then there's people that don't know about them at all. And people are extremely excited when you show them through the scope the eagles sitting up in the tree or up on the nest. They get very, very involved and excited, and they want to know more about them.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, Joe, on social media. I see there was a video going around about a drone dropping food for a vulture chick.
I
Um,
did, yes, I saw that.
I mean, that would be really, really cool. I guess, with the Black Eagle parents, if anything probably had to happen to a parent and there was too much work for the one parent to do, it probably could be an option.
Yeah, for sure. I actually laughed when I saw that, because there's a lot of drones, people using drones around the botanical gardens.
Yeah.
And often, yeah, you'll get a message coming through on our WhatsApp group. There's a drone around there. We need to get them moved away because
Hmm.
they actually interfere
With the
more with
nest.
the nest. But
Right.
that's like a whole different thing. Yeah. So of course it
Yeah,
would be completely permitted and monitored properly. Yeah.
sure. It would be quite interesting to probably have an eagle take out a drone and try and feed it to their chick. Probably wouldn't be a good idea.
No, not at all.
Oh dear. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us, and it's been an absolute privilege to chat to you, and a lot of reminiscing and going back in time, and
Yeah,
enjoying that. And
it is. We could talk for hours. Hey,
yeah, we normally do talk for hours, so we're going to have to
we do.
limit ourselves here. So that's why I've been watching the time and making sure that
Oh,
we're not going too far. But I think it's been great, and I hope people have got some information from this. And yeah, thanks so much, Joe.
thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah, and a first on your podcast.
Yay, my first
Yay.
interview. Yay.
Yay. And I'm so proud of you for starting up this initiative. I think it's going to be fantastic going forward, and just getting as many people involved, and yeah, connections. And at the end of the day, I think that's the
Yep,
important part.
that is the important part. You hit the nail on the head there with that one. That is the whole reason for this. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, guys, if you've got any questions, if you've got questions for Joe, maybe you could also send any questions about the podcast, maybe questions for Joe that I could forward off to her and she could maybe answer for you. And anything maybe you'd like to hear on the podcast, you can send your emails to animal.talk201@gmail.com. So look forward to hearing from you guys. Make sure you stay safe, make sure you social distance, and remember, animals are our passion. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Cool, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, is that? Oh,
Yay.
yeah. Was I meant to you by at the end there?
Sounds like you just fell off the bed, actually.
Wow. Um,